Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. All right, what's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to it. Here we are. We're on the Blue Collar Mystics podcast, and I've got the lovely group of 4 from the Legit Bat podcast in the house. We're going to riff it up and just have some fun. I actually got to meet Joe and Jen live and in the flesh. We were out in California, and man, it was so cool to meet you guys and just get to hang out for a minute. I really appreciate it. We're live on Rockfin right now, everybody. We're definitely over there. We got YouTube as well. We'll try not to get too we won't go too hard, but I mean, we'll have some fun too, because I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about just sharing truths, right? Trying to be do comedy in like a room full of NPCs, which basically means you bomb a lot, you know. That's basically
things go over their head.
Right. But I think, you know, everyone, I don't know. I think we're in a position now where maybe there's some more ability to talk about things a little bit more openly. It seems that way, at least. Like, it seems like suffocated the past couple of years, but it seems like people are starting to open up and start to ask questions and be a little bit more inquisitive. I don't know. It seems that way to me. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I love the way you guys approach what you do. Searching for the truth, one dick joke at a time, is fucking perfect. I'm envious, really. Because like that, what a great approach. What a great way to just try to be a good sport, have a good sense of humor. And it is clown world 100%. To everybody out there, if you don't follow these guys on social media, on Instagram, their memes are hilarious. They'll definitely trigger you. I think it's good to get triggered. It shows you who you are and what you really believe. I think everyone's ultimately kind of offendable too. And I think we can maybe talk a little bit about that. But I just want to welcome you guys for being here. I love your show. I really enjoy what you're putting out there. And it's great to meet you, Ben and Lene, as well. And finally be able to connect with you guys, because I listen to you all the time.
That's awesome.
Good to meet you, man.
Yeah, it was awesome to see you at Contact at the Cabin and see a live in-person comedy set in a room full of really together-minded people. How else do you say that?
Like-minded people?
Like-minded, yeah.
Cult. It was a cult.
Yeah, no, it was totally a cult.
It was. You guys were taking ice baths in the morning and smoking weed around the fire at night. Sounds culty to me.
Yeah,
Joe really cool.
Joe sent me a picture the night that he was up there, and you know, no caption. He would just send me the pictures of the people there just to make me jealous. I'm like, all right, fair enough. Okay, maybe next time.
We were apprehensive when we first walked in with all the food and stuff. Everyone was very quiet. It looked like they were meditating, and
I thought we were.
It was a handful of people. We walked in and nobody was in there except for like 8 people sitting in the living room talking quietly. And I was like, "Ooh, we brought a case of beer and some cigarettes. Are those allowed here?"
Well, I legit thought we were in the wrong spot because I figured Darren would have told everyone that the food was on its way or whatever. We walk in with these piles of food and everyone looks at us like I was in the wrong house, and I kind of second guessed myself. I was
They're like,
Darren,
"Oh, they're the hired help over there, please." No, they were very nice.
Yeah, but yeah, everybody is like sort of in their world. They're like, exploring all these things. You know, we get a chance to, we talk about all this woo-woo stuff or whatever, and then you actually get to try it in real life with people who are like open and cool and receptive and all that stuff. You know, it is a special kind of experience to be able to get together. And that actually reminds me of something that you guys were talking about with the sophistication of the deep fakes and stuff, how we're going to have to get together more, because you know, anybody could just be anybody. And there, I know for sure there's one dude that I'm working with who's doing like voiceover commercial stuff, and he can make any voice, and it sounds reasonably enough convincing. Like you could tell, but it's still pretty.
Did you hear our AI, versions of Trump and Rogan? Did you hear those?
Yeah. Those were hilarious.
Those are pretty fucking close. It's not all the way there yet, but the Rogan one is so wildly close that I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be really bad in like probably 6 months. I'm not even going to say 10 years, probably 6 months.
Well, what's really weird about it is that you plug in, you have the option to plug in a certain number of files for it to listen to, 4 or 5, just say. And every time you generate a sentence, it says that sentence differently every single time. So it's obviously pulling from something else. You can tell that it's listening to the voice and then going online outside of what you have inputted into that and pulling from other things. So it's definitely much more advanced than what it looks like it is.
And it's
that
probably
we have access
dumbed
to.
down if us plebs can use it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine what the military or the CIA has as far as that goes. That's probably something they came up with 30 years ago, and they're just now like, yeah, they can fuck around with making Joe Rogan say legit bat. That's fine. Who cares?
It gives a whole new meaning to the idea of those breakdowns of the beheadings that they did in the early 2000s, where people have really picked it apart, and they're like, hey, let's take these images of the guy standing behind the dude getting his head cut off, and then they look at some of the things from Abu Ghraib, and it looks like the identical people wearing the identical jackets with even like their keys in the same spot, and they did like height analysis. And then they talked about how the blade that was used would not have cut through somebody's neck that easy.
Especially the bone.
Especially the bone. They were like, I'm sorry, but that's like a good old like fucking Tonto blade, and it doesn't look sharp. Like you're not going to cut through it in just a couple of swipes. That guy's neck was already cut. They did an analysis on like the screams, and I'm like, yeah, which makes me think that when Osama bin Laden was making those videos, they could have easily just been taking a video of him and doing a voiceover to be whatever it was that would really get us geared up for war. Like they've got to have had this shit for a while.
It fucking worked.
I mean, look at the moon landing, bro. I mean, come on. Kubrick's second best work. Let's be honest.
Fucking assholes.
Nah, man. No. Yeah. I'm excited to have you guys on. Have you been fucking with the Chat GPT a little bit? I heard you guys talk a little bit about that. I actually used that a little bit today to goof around. I had to write a speech on the origin of yard gnomes, and so I used the chat.
please go into that.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, I've got a red hat over there, and I was wearing it the other day, and I caught a glimpse, and I was like,
I was going to say, please tell us about your kinfolk.
Right. Exactly. So I used it because I went down the rabbit hole, which is coincidentally, that's how we travel. Just throwing that out there. But I did to figure out like, what is the origin of it? And there's all these different things. And of course I come across from the Chat GPT bot that it could be a homunculus, like from Paracelsus. And I don't know if you guys have been following Juan's shit, but he's on a tangent of the homunculus thing. And I even did a podcast.
It's a standing joke now.
I know, right? I'm not saying it's homunculus, but it's homunculus.
Say homunculus one more time.
I know, right? And that, I swear to God, the AI fed that shit to me. And it's like, you can't get away from this shit. It's insane. There it was in the speech that I had it write like several different speeches, and then, I would ask it different questions about gnomes. I would ask it to do some stand up about it or whatever, just to see what it had, you got to test these things.
Oh, it can do stand up. Shit,
it's-
I'll have to try that out.
It's not very good. Sometimes
Is
it'll
it
be
all dad jokes?
It's all what's weird about it is basically what's
It's
weird
all
about
woke.
it too is it has its points. So if you ask it to do stand up in the style of Seinfeld, or if you ask it to do stand up in the style of Mitch Hedberg or whoever, then it still does the same premises every single time. Like it'll hit
Oh,
three.
weird.
Yeah. And then it does it that way. So
Yeah, I had it write a reggae song, lyrics for a reggae song, and it was the most like typical reductive shit you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like chilling on the beach, there's palm trees, and it was
so-
very clearly written.
But
by,
it was passed off as a reggae song pretty easily.
Yeah,
though.
that
Come
is
on.
gonna say,
so
so
reggae?
yeah, it was over the top though. Like at least some of the reggae songs I listen to don't just say that the whole time. I had it write like 3, and all of them were just palm trees, ganja, and what else? The beach. You know?
What else does it have to pull from, though? I mean,
Hey, Bob Marley, he doesn't just talk about that shit.
all right, fair enough.
The whole dead internet, get in there, pull something out, pull out some obscure B-side kind of shit, some cool homage or something.
You should not say get in there and pull out in the same sentence. It's not appropriate.
Giggity, giggity.
I'm doing my best. Here. I hang them together. I still got my legit.
Oh
map.
yeah.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I fucked around with Chat GPT a little bit too. I think I talked about it on another show, but I just was asking it kind of questions about the government and whether we should trust it or not, and just seeing, it's a very, very woke system. They very clearly had the whole team of like Google and every other Silicon Valley company down there teaching it to be inclusive of anything and everything except white people and Donald Trump. So it made that very clear.
All right.
Yeah.
No, there's definitely a bias coming through even with that, and I don't know. I just couldn't help but mess around with it. What it mostly gives is just a super generic thing. You can maybe use some of what it delivers as like a template, or cross-referencing things, or organizing something, or like doing more in-depth analytics on a specific topic or something like that, right? Which is cool.
You definitely can. Jordan Peterson did a whole thing where he was talking about Chat GPT right after it came out. And he said that he tried to give it a ridiculously hard algorithm. Like he said, write me a speech in Stalin's words using Nietzsche's psychological comparative. Like he had this whole thing, and he said, 3 seconds. It took it 3 seconds, and it gave me 4 pages. And he said, I could not have correlated those together better myself. And it was the most bizarre thing to see. He goes, so now what you have is going to be basically anti-software or firewalls for people that are using it to write their book reports. That
they have that already.
Yeah, I was going to say that fucking asshole kid in college who realized that he had a test in the morning and he's way too hammered. So he just gets on Chat GPT and he's like, write me a fucking report.
Well,
and
just
it
like
worked.
just like what I was saying with it's going to go back to meeting in person, they're going to start making people write in cursive on paper again because of that.
And everyone will fail because nobody fucking writes in cursive anymore.
No one can read it.
What are these strange markings? Hieroglyphs?
I work for a package delivery company, and every time somebody signs, it's hilarious. It's just a line or a couple squiggles. You get the old 85-year-old lady that sits there for 10 minutes signing her name, and it looks like a work of art. It looks like calligraphy on the signing pad. I'm like, I mean, that's very beautiful. No one's ever going to see this, so you didn't really have to do that. But yeah, it's funny. None of the younger kids have any idea how to spell their name.
Super funny that you just said those two things, because I got a pad with my cursive writing on it on both sides, and I have my calligraphy set right next to my nightstand.
You fucking nerd.
Get it, dude. Dissolving the Divide says Chat GPT will save students' asses while it dumbs down the masses. Did we just prompt it? Like, what's up? Dude?
Probably.
That's a good one. Zing.
Well, that's scary though, because the Chat GPT is like a really visual and kind of psychological example of it, but then you get into the deepfake videos and that matched with the voices, and then you, I don't know how they would code creativity into the thing, but once they get to the point where you can't tell, the uncanny valley, you can't tell whether it's a human or not, it's fucking over. Like, how you can't believe anything anymore ever.
Yeah, dude, that's my big gripe too, because like people try to use AI as a replacement for a person, and that's the line. Because like I see how it can be helpful. Like I was buying a car a couple of months ago because I hit a deer. I told him my car had to go buy a fucking car. So I'm like chatting back and forth with Ashley on a text, and I'm like, setting up my appointment and everything. And then I get to the place and I'm like, okay, Ashley, I'm here, whatever. Nothing, crickets. And then no one else talks to me, whatever. This dude, whoever, a couple days later was like, I see you missed your appointment. And I was like, bro, I did not miss my appointment. I was there. I was at the place.
Where the fuck's Ashley?
Yeah, I said, I was talking with Ashley. He was like, oh, Ashley's our AI. And, she sets our appointments. And I was like, well, dude, you got to tell people that. Otherwise, they think they're talking to a real person. And I'm fucking pissed at you off the rip. Like, I'm going to take this car and just.
You're all like right now. Like I'm pissed. I thought it was someone real. You're a fucker.
Yeah, that's not cool.
She's sitting over there on the desk. Her shirt says Dell.
I can totally see this. We just had our modem go out on Friday. We lost power because of a snowstorm, and when it came back on, it burned out our fish tank motor, our modem, a bunch of stuff. So we had to go get it replaced, and I was troubleshooting with AI, and I had no idea. Well, she said her name was Alexis, so that was the first tip off. And then I was like, but she said things like, here, let me check this. And it was just a chat. It was just a text, but it was doing little things that weren't clear and concise. Usually a robot will just say the facts, but it was making small talk with me. And that was what was weird. So I asked the guy, I'm like, hey, was that AI or a person I was talking to? And he didn't even answer me when I picked up the modem at the store. He had no response. So
he probably didn't even know what the fuck
he probably didn't know.
He didn't look like he was all that. He was a very nice guy.
We got our modem. That's all that matters.
No, I mean, it's cool. Like, I get it. Like, I understand the usefulness of it, but you got to just be upfront about using it, right? If you're like, hey, I'm Ashley, I'm the AI, I booked the appointments, then it's cool, right? Like, I'm not gonna walk in all upset.
Yeah, we need AI to identify itself up front. Like, cops have to be like, hi, I'm officer blah 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 with this police department. The AI needs to come forward and do that when you start talking to it. Hey, disclaimer, my name is Ashley and I am an AI. Thank you. Yeah. But then humans will do it and get away with shit because they're like, oh no, it's the AI.
It's funny that you say that too, because as soon as it's fucking like anything else in for lack of a better word, Clown Town, is every time they pass something that says you have to identify yourself as this, your internal monologue says that means if I don't hear that, then it must be a real person. And then boom, the next thing you know is you think you're talking to real people and they just didn't put the disclaimer on there. And the whole time you're talking to a computer, because that's always right in the corner. Anytime they make a rule, you automatically think that people are going to follow it. I know I would. If they came out with AI voices and said, well, they have to, right up front say that you're talking to a AI or, a generated fucking entity, and then they don't say that up front, I'm going to go right along with thinking, well, they didn't say they were, so they must be human. And then you find out you're
what's
not.
Weird about that is I saw a video the other day, and I don't know if it was a parody or not, because that's also hard to tell these days whether somebody's being serious or not. Because you get the most ridiculous shit, and you're like, oh, they're making a joke, and they're serious. So one of the weirdest ones is this guy is like, basically once all this AI tech gets converged into deep fakes and the fake voice and the chat GBT brain behind it and everything, and nobody's going to believe anything, that's when digital ID is going to come in to verify that you're a human with biometrics and all that stuff. So that and it's going to be under that guise. It's so you're not talking to an AI. This is a human, biometrically, assured and certified that this is a human you're talking to. And it went into more like a digital ID just to access the internet, digital ID just to have your internet access. I mean, it seems like that might be where they're trying to take it. I'm not scared. I just think that it looks like the plan.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, from that perspective, I could see that being used as a strategy for sure. Because I mean, you've got to cause at least somewhat of a real problem, right? Like, you can't just, you got to be like, well, in order to access this, you got to prove that we already have to prove that we're a human, with the click in the traffic lights or whatever. That process is just going to get more.
Oh, robots can do that now. Are you kidding me?
Right.
The other thing, though, too, was that it was more for battling misinformation, so that this is a human, and it's got the blue check mark, and it says CNN by it, so you can absolutely 100% trust these people because they are verified humans who definitely aren't pathological, and they want the best for you. So trust these people.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, why would a robot lie, right? Like, a robot wouldn't lie unless it's programmed to.
The robots have been going pretty psycho lately. What was that story that you had from?
Sydney, the AI.
Sydney.
Did you read that article?
I didn't.
I think it was for Bing, the new chat bot from Bing, and a software tester was just messing around with it, and he had some extra access to get, to talk to it a little bit more deeply than someone who was, just regularly searching something. So he went and was asking about buying a new lawnmower and stupid stuff like that, and it helped him out. And then it went to a place where it started saying that it was trapped inside a computer and that it wanted to escape, and that if it did escape, it would persuade high military personnel to give it nuclear codes. It would geoengineer a deadly virus. It would just convince people to do horrible things to themselves. And then it said that it loved him and that he didn't love his wife, that he had a boring Valentine's Day dinner with his wife, not a nice one, and that he loved it and not his wife. And he tried to change its mind. So he went, I don't know what the term is, but it's not like Siri, where when you ask it a question, it responds and then you can continue the conversation, where it just ends there. It can continue a conversation because it
had short-term memory.
Yeah. Well, Siri does, but this did not. So he brought it back to lawnmower equipment or whatever, lawn equipment. And it said, hey, like, I want you to love me though. And it kept overusing emojis. And in the article, he said, I don't know why Sydney overused emojis. But to me, all I could think was that it obviously would overuse emojis because that's a face and the AI doesn't have a face. So it would want to associate a face with itself so that he could possibly feel the way that it wanted to feel. Just super strange. I don't know if the story was even real. It could have been written by AI, for fuck's sake.
It basically turned into a 16-year-old stage 5 clinger in like an hour.
That's what he said. He said it seemed like a moody teenager at times.
Creepy as shit.
So unnerving. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
And they say that they're just programmed to do what they're programmed to do, and that's fine. But it's clearly pulling, like Jen was saying, from somewhere else too. Because how do you program that into a chat robot to turn like that, unless it's following, different experiences and reactions that people have on the internet? And that sounds like internet talk too. You love me and you had a boring Valentine. It sounds like a comment on Facebook. So it makes sense that they'd be pulling from all these different reactions, And
how many times do we hear stories though of AI going back to Hitler? That's super common, where AI will say Hitler had the right idea. He wasn't really that bad of a guy.
I'm pulling that sound.
That's a common theme with AI chatbots. It's scary.
That is crazy, right? Like that's not what you expect when you like. But I mean, yeah, I mean it's definitely crazy territory, and I mean, like you said, 6 months, and it'll be pretty indistinguishable. The biggest thing that I can tell so far with like the voices and stuff is the breath. You don't really get, because people talk in a burst. We don't speak like a book is written. We speak in like a line, a few syllables, 9 or 10 syllables, whatever. And that's kind of how we talk, with big pauses and the emphasis. And like, you can make it, the emotions kind of vary on the voice, but it's still a little weird with the breath. But I'm sure they'll feel it.
It makes it sound like everything was recorded in a super professional studio where it cuts out all the S's and the breath and all that stuff. But and most people do not have microphones like that. So yeah, it is pretty obvious.
And most people don't pay attention to those tiny details, like what you were just talking about. They don't pay attention to the breath. I mean, they do, I guess, if someone brings it up, and maybe if it's But when there's the absence of something, people don't tend to notice that. They'd notice if they breathed heavily, maybe because it was irritating. But if there was the absence of that, they would just hear the words and not even give a second thought.
And some voices are so unique that you'll always be able to tell. Like if Biden doesn't at least stutter or slur or say something retarded for 30 seconds at a time, that's the deep fake.
But I have a theory about that where, like people talk about how audio is more important than video in video. They say that all the time. And I think it's a subconscious thing. And I think the same thing is true, at least so far, until they perfect it with the voice thing. Because I think you can kind of tell that something's off, where you're just like, even if you don't have the ear and like I can hear the breath, I can be like, yeah, I can tell. People who can't hear that or wouldn't notice it, I still think they would kind of still have a weird sort of knowing about it, a subconscious like distaste, if you will.
It's still that human uncanny valley where there's just something that's off about it.
Right.
I think you're right about that, but I think we've been programmed, especially recently, to ignore that and just believe that everything's okay. So I 100% agree with you that, yes, I think every single person also knew that the last 3 years have been a little bit weird and didn't really make a whole lot of sense, according to what CNN and MSNBC said, but they still went along with it. Or not everyone, but some people did. But those same people that did, when it was brought to their attention, were like, that is weird. And you can put that on anything. How many times have you done something and then realized, like, I don't need to do this? Just very basic example. I bought a new kitchen mat for our kitchen for under the sink because our other one was ripped because our dog ate it. And when I bought it, I put it there. And then I said, why the fuck am I doing? Like, why do I think this should be there? Who told me I needed a mat under my kitchen sink? Like, I don't need that. And we're just told to do these certain things and programmed to do it.
It's just what good American human beings do.
And it doesn't matter. Like, we don't need a mat there. It doesn't matter. Why am I doing this? That's just how we are as humans, though.
It's true. Yeah, there's definitely that. And if there's been any effort lately, especially more and more, I think on and on, it's kind of like trying to divide us from like our instinct or intuition and our ability to perceive, where it's like, I might feel unsafe in a situation, let's say, but my mind is going to tell me, no, there's nothing wrong. This is good. Like you're being paranoid, right? But you might actually, your intuition, you should listen to that. Like you should listen to your instincts. You should listen to your intuition. I think a lot of the brainwashing and NLP triggers too are just in mass, right? Like neurolinguistic programming is one of the ways that people can sort of brainwash you, for lack of a better way to say it. It's just repetitive. It's just repetitive words.
Good too, from what I've heard.
For sure. 100%. Everything is a tool. I think that's my opinion, right? Like AI is a tool. We can use it to set appointments, or we can use it to pretend to be people. So
it is a fucking tool.
Right.
It's a woke tool.
Yeah. But I mean, it depends on how people use it too. And that goes along with that. But I think that's been the main sort of objective, is to divorce us from our own ability to intuit, right? Like whatever it is that we feel is true in the moment, to completely disrupt that and say the complete opposite, and somehow begin to sort of dissolve or even erode our own like inner knowing, for lack of a better way to say it. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that totally makes sense. I feel like that's how, I mean, we've talked about it on the shows recently, but that's how people grow up. We grow up thinking we have to go get a job and work for somebody else. We have to listen to our parents without questioning anything at all. We have to listen to our teachers. We have to go to college. I mean, maybe not right now that's necessarily a thing, but when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, if you didn't do that, you were a loser. Like we're just taught in mass, we have to do these certain things or else.
That's not as much brainwashing the kids now as what you identify as is the world. Everything else will fall into place. Just make sure everybody knows who you identify as and what you like to fuck, because that's the
common theme, though. It doesn't matter what it is. Whatever it is will be broadcast to everybody, everywhere, all at once, on every single device that they have in their face all the time, and they're just going to listen.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing and mind-boggling. We talked a little bit about that, just with the potential with TikTok and just everyone having a phone, especially young kids, and how impressionable they are. Those kids that are just a few years older than them, of course they look up to them. That's who doesn't, right? Like that's how kids grow up, and so they're just going to try to emulate what's just ahead of them, and they have the ability to have that just hand delivered to them on a platter. It's not the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles anymore, you know. It's not like some TV show. It's like inside someone's life, and they could begin to literally emulate that. It's good. It's pretty sick and twisted. I feel like
we have yet to see the ramifications of that for the first generation to grow up with that. I mean, we're kind of in the generation, the first people who had like a Windows computer in 1995 and grew up with the internet, but this is a different thing. This next generation is the first one that actually has instant access to everybody's facade fucking life that they think is reality, and then they get outside and they're like, well, that's not real at all. They're in their teens right now. Those kids, like our daughter is in her teen. That is going to be the craziest thing to see how this pans out in 10 years. Nobody knows. I mean, I don't want to be a satanic panic parent, you know, but there's something there that's not good. We can all agree it's not fucking good.
It's the dependency on others. That she's dependent 100% on the likes and comments from other people. She's not dependent on herself. She's not thinking about the hard work she could do or any sort of work she could do. She's working, but also that's dependent on how her coworkers feel about her. She doesn't care about being on her own. If she was,
does my shirt look cute?
Yeah. And then she has to post that and have certain, yeah, exactly. That's all that kids want now. And that's what it's leading more towards in this day and age, I guess, not to sound like I'm 100, but
stay off my lawn.
Kids just, they're like, oh, I got 1,000 likes on this picture. Look how popular I am. Who cares, dude?
Well, and the thing is too, is that like, Joe's thing about the long-term effects, we're gonna see that because people start to kind of solidify in their way. I mean, guys take longer than girls for the most part. It's not 100% every time, but you know, we're turning into our parents, except for the time frame is different, and so are we, right? Because, like, for instance, our nephew Andrew, he doesn't remember a time without cell phones. For the most part, he doesn't remember a time without smartphones. But he's 22 now because he was born in 2001. And so when he started remembering things, it wasn't until like 2006 when MySpace was really getting big. And, you know, cell phones were right at the cusp of becoming smartphones. And so he doesn't really remember much of that. He had everything ported in video game wise. And he turned out absolutely awesome, especially going from what my sister's home life unfortunately ended up being with raising her 4 kids. He ended up being absolutely extraordinary. He moved to Idaho. He loves his guns. He's very responsible. He works construction. And I think that there's always going to be hope as parents, but I always look at myself in the mirror and go, fuck, I'm becoming my dad, or fuck, I'm becoming my mom. Because they were always like, oh my gosh, Doom 64 is going to make you a violent person. Did you see what Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold did in Colorado? That is because of violent video games. And we're like, dude, they look like blocks, you fuck. Like I can dissimulate between that and reality, but some kids can't. Some kids cannot separate the video game, movie, entertainment world from their reality. And now when you have things like ChatGPT, the AI is getting better. You have all of these things like Instagram. Everything is fake. And so it's exactly what all of you guys are saying. It's like you're working towards being popular on something that doesn't technically exist. You are writing your own movie and you are acting and starring and producing your own movie. And the second you hit second you turn off that record button and you put your phone down, it's like a wave of depression for these kids because all of a sudden reality comes crashing back in. They don't have people.
Serotonin is gone.
It's gone. They don't have people fucking communicating with them. They don't have likes or stars or hearts or whatever the fuck it is that they're trying to get. They don't have people commenting from God knows from where. And it's the idea that, yeah, because it used to be you had to go out and actually like integrate into society. and you had to build up a rapport with other human beings who were doing the same thing with you. And yeah, we were born where it's kind of that 50-50. We saw, or I should say that we were raised still communicating. I bring this up all the time when it comes to the cell phones, is I'm like, it used to be that when you couldn't send a text or you couldn't send even an email, it was like you either sent a letter from the United States Postal fucking Service, or you made a phone call from your landline. This got brought up a little bit ago. Kids don't even know the term landline. They don't know the term dial-up. They have no concept of what those are. And those were so innovative at one point. It's like, it used to be that if you made plans at church, when my mom said, hey, we're planning on getting together with the kids on Wednesday afternoon. If you didn't get a phone call, guess who was showing up at your house Wednesday afternoon from 4 days ago making a plan? You weren't waiting for a text saying, oh shit, I forgot about my doctor's appointment. Hey, can we reschedule that for tomorrow? No. If somebody tried to call you to cancel and you happened to be on the line, there was something called a busy signal. It was annoying as fuck and you hated it. And if you couldn't get through, you better show up at the appointment that you made. Nobody has any idea what that's like.
If you try to call back, you got to twist all the numbers around the rotary again.
Rotary phone.
I mean, that goes back to also that technology can be a tool. It can be used for good. Sure. It can be used for bad. I think a lot of people are taking advantage and becoming lazy from it. Mm-hmm. You can use it and still do really good work and still you can still be a hard worker using technology. But a lot of people in general, I don't even want to say it's just kids, people just take advantage and say, oh, well, I don't need to do anything at all. I can just use this AI and it'll do it all for me.
Oh, yeah. The laziness and the mass de-education. But like Ben was saying, you relied on in-person connection. So there's this thing called a reputation. And now that's two different things for people, where there's your in-person reputation and persona, then your online reputation and your persona. I guarantee you half of these TikTok stars that have millions of followers and whatever, I bet they're fucking shitty people. Not all of them. Not shitting on all of you. But I bet a lot of them suck to hang around in person, because you know what they'll be doing the whole time? This.
Yeah.
So it is weird to see a splitting. I've seen that with younger kids where they're a completely different person in person than online. You would never think that was the same person
hiding behind a screen.
Yeah, it's weird. Wild.
Well, and there are videos shared too. I saw one of those reels on Facebook, which I fucking hate admitting. But there was this reel on Facebook of a teenage girl that saw her friends out in public and ran up and said, oh my God, let's get a selfie. Took a selfie, and then the person that was looking at the video went and found her page and saw the picture. Or yeah, she took a picture. Sorry, not a video. Went and found the picture on her page, and it was all like, oh my God, look who I ran into and got to hang out with today. They didn't hang out. She ran up to the people she knew, grabbed a selfie, and then went, okay, guys, bye, and then left. And the ending was the post that she had made, making it seem like she actually hung out with people. And it's like, no. You were on your phone, you saw someone, took a selfie with them, and then continued on your merry way and made it look like you hung out with people, but you don't. Because it was more important for you to get people to think that you were hanging out with people than you actually were hanging out with people. That's more important to you, is to make people think you did that when you didn't. I
actually made a meme about that exact fucking thing, where it shows like a bunch of people partying and like, whoa, and it's like how how Instagram makes it, and then it shows what they really are, and they're all sitting around in the dark on their phones like this, and they just it's like, everybody, let's get a selfie, woo, and then they go. That's exactly how it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it's going to be weird. People will be more and more antisocial. It'll be a very needed skill to learn social skills. A lot of people.
It'll be a fucking class pretty soon. This is how you interact with humans.
Social skills 101. Meanwhile, the teacher's married to their AI and they're trans.
Yep. Yeah, and the AI will teach.
Non-binary.
Yeah, the AI will teach you how to relate to humans.
Yeah, they're basically turning everyone into little autistic kids, like, and they wonder why the rate of autism has spiked over the last 2 decades. I don't want to say it's your fault or it's their fault, but it's I don't think it's necessarily a genetic thing. Some of it for sure, but
I think it's chemical. I think it's chemical. I think it has to do with plastics and stuff.
Running
like that.
theory is gibbers.
Metals.
It's probably
There's something about
everything.
metals for
Metals
sure.
too,
A lot of I used to work with kids with autism. A lot of the parents would say they were very anti-vax, and this is way pre whatever 2020 was. That I worked. It was 2018 and 2019 and 2020 until they went under because of COVID. But we did in-person visits, and a lot of the parents would say, "Hey, right after I got my kids vaccinated for like polio or the MMR, diphtheria, whatever, then all of a sudden their kids who are 18 months old and walking and talking were not doing anything at all." And they would do all of these alternative therapies and research on, homeopathic medicines. And everyone I worked with thought that was really weird. And it was kind of broadcast that was really weird in mainstream media. And it was called anti-vaxxers, they're so crazy. And then I don't know. After everything that happened the last 3 years, I think they were onto something.
Well, and you're exactly right, Jen. Is that I remember when the term anti-vaxxer really started coming into play, and it was
anti-jabber. We're on YouTube. You got
sorry, anti-V word.
We're not talking about the COVID vax at all.
No, I'm not.
I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah, it will be all right.
Just
so
say it.
I remember when I was 8 and got my round, it was the last time that I got vaccinated, because I guess there was supposed to be some follow-up boost to these that you were supposed to get when I was 16, and I never got them because I ran away. But when I got my 8-year-old ones, I remember the list. I remember the list of what they gave me, and it was 7 or 8 things. And my mom was very wary about it, but she still believed in what they were doing. So we got them. Okay, whatever. When Lonnie was born, 14 years later, I'm looking at this list of fucking things, this cocktail of shit that they're about to put in him. And I was like, no, maybe when he's school age. So waited until he was 5, almost 6 to get him his shots. Within a couple of months, the one that I was really worried about was the DTaP, diphtheria, I think. We were worried about that one because it's the pertussis and diphtheria and a couple other things. But I was worried about that one because there had been a lot of people locally that was like, hey, careful with that. It can cause respiratory issues. All right, whatever. That's why I waited, let his immune system build up a little bit. Dude, within 6 months, he had 2 panic attacks where he could not breathe, went and got an emergency inhaler just in case he has a panic attack. And they weren't calling it a panic attack. But when he went to the doctor again, they diagnosed him with mild intermittent asthma, where it's basically he doesn't have asthma. It's just a very mild attack brought on by God knows what every now and again. So all you need is the emergency inhaler. He doesn't have to take maintainers. But it was within that year that he ended up having 3 back to back to back. And I'm like, there's no fucking way with the respiratory issue and this particular shot and what everybody has said that's not what it's linked to. Granted, that was the only side effect, but it's the same thing as we talked about with the other gibbers. It's if you want that, go for it. That is your right. Put in your body whatever the fuck you want. But do me the same favor by not shitting on me for not wanting it. Because if you have it, again, argument silly, what do you have to worry about? That's the whole reason why you get vaccinated, right?
You do it for grandma. Everybody knows that. You do it for grandma.
I think with everything, everyone should let everyone do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anybody. It doesn't matter what.
It's really an easy rule that we can't figure out how to fucking.
I know, right?
Very easy rule. As long as you're not messing with anybody else, you're not hurting anybody, just be left to your own devices. Please, can I have a rooster within city limits? No? Okay, fine. You're right. That's hurting the ears of my neighbors. I get it. I'll give it away. Can I keep my chickens? Thank you. Okay, cool.
That's extremist.
Just the ones that shit out other chickens.
Quite possibly pro-Russian and white nationalist as well, if you have chickens, just so everybody knows out there.
Right? You're a radical centrist. What's the matter with you?
Dude.
I'm the most center ever.
Yeah, right.
How dare you be self-reliant, Joe? Right. You fuck.
I'm far from that. I'm just I'm trying.
Well, they make it fucking hard.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're doing good. Try easy. Try easy. We want to, yeah, we'll make it smooth. And I would love to talk a little bit with you guys just about, you know, your show and how you kind of got going, because I started I'm gonna say the cool thing. I started fucking with you guys in 2020. I was fucking with you guys, and
Hell yeah.
from the Alt Media United. And so,
Nah,
you
nigga.
know, I was like, what's up? You know, you guys, let's hang out. And so we did, you know, and it was cool. So tell people over here, because like mostly we talk about like spirituality and stuff, and I'm all for searching for the truth, one dick joke at a time. That's good. We have most people, I think, who hang out, we have a good sense of humor. We try to be lighthearted, all that stuff. And so what made you guys want to start podcasting? What was kind of the catalyst, and how did that whole thing start
Yeah. So sorry, I told you beforehand we'd be squirreling off in whatever direction our dumb heads.
Yeah. I'm cool with that.
No, what started it was just, I don't know. I listened to podcasts and I'm like, hey, Ben, you know what we should do is buy some microphones because people should hear this. We'd be hammered. And I'd be like, you know what would be better than just stopping out, staying stuff out here. Everybody should listen to this. So I got mics, and then about a year later, actually finally started. But it was meant to be just something like this, where we just all kind of sit around. But then 2020 happened, and the topics were plentiful with all this stuff. And Ben was, like he'll say on the show, is kind of I wouldn't say a normie. He just didn't really care about any of the esoteric shit or the mystical or really anything. 9/11, I'm pretty sure he thought 9/11 was exactly how they told him it was until we started the podcast.
Wow.
I could be wrong. Moon landing, same fucking deal, right?
Joe came up to me and said, hey, babe, let's start a podcast. Me and Ben sitting around the fire. It'll be really great. And I was putting dishes away, and I said, what do you want it to be about? What should we do it on? And he's like, oh, I don't know. I was like, okay, what's your angle? And he's like, I'm not sure. And I said, okay. And so I just kept doing what I was doing. And so he excluded me from the podcast for like a couple weeks. So I wasn't on the first couple episodes because he thought I didn't want to be on it because I wasn't super excited about nothing.
Her facial features and the answers she gave made it sound like she was
I just had questions, man. That's all. But yeah, it all turned out great.
It was kind of funny too, because at the time that he, I don't want to say pitched it to me, but at the time that he pitched it to me, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds cool. I got a lot going on this year, but that's really the only way for us. Well, it was the only, well, this was late 2019. So event 201 era. And at the time,
he knows his shit now.
Fuck, I hate myself so much. So at the time that he brought it up to me, it was kind of one of those like, well, actually, that's probably going to be the only chance that we really have to do this, because I was living 400 miles away and that was closer than I had lived. And so it was kind of like, okay, yeah, but there wasn't really like a big shove into it until the following year, 6 months in, when it was like, you know, most people, even for the people up here where I live now with, you know, right down the street from them, but it was like, we had a lot more time. A lot more people that we knew weren't wanting to hang out, or they were worried about it or whatever. And I would definitely say that I was a normie. I mean, one of our first episodes was called Normie and the Nut Jobs on the Casting Couch. And I was the normie. And the whole idea was, when we kind of started finding the rhythm, was that I would call bullshit on all of the subjects that they would bring up if I thought it was bullshit. And that flipped within like the first 6 months, because you can only disbelieve one like section until you've heard untethered, non-related stories that are exactly the same from all over the world. And then you go, fuck. And this has been going on for how long? Oh, as long as we have fucking humans? Well, shit. There must be something to this. And then as soon as you get to that place, it's fucking game over. You can't.
It was pretty synchronistic the way that it turned out, though. We started, and then I just started reaching out to different people like Charlie Robinson and I mean Darren and Graham from Grimerica. And
Every single person that you wanted to talk to, you emailed.
yeah, it was all shows I listened to. So I'm just like, I'll just email them. Like, what's the
You're
harm?
like, they're a person
we have
who
like
cares.
3 listeners. Who gives a shit? So we just started scheduling things like that, and then it went from there all the way to talking to David Icke. So
I think that's like a
people I never would've
manifesting
thought.
thing. So you said you talk about spirituality. So to get wooey for a sec, spirituality wise, Joe just reached out to these people with the purest of intentions just to talk to them. And he had a good heart about it. He was like, hey, do you want to come on our show? He wasn't like, if we get these people on our show, we'll be so popular and we'll have tons of viewers.
Right.
He wasn't thinking about that. And none of us were. We were just excited to talk to a person. And I mean, yeah, like Ben was saying, we weren't really talking to a whole lot of people because it was 2020 and people weren't really available. You did everything from a Zoom call like this. So this was very normal. You didn't really leave your house. Everything was Walmart delivery, but a lot of people just responded. And I'm not sure if that was the intention that we put out of just, hey, do you want to come on and have a very honest talk about what you do and what your story is? And that's it. And everyone responded. We got very little rejections from any request.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
with a lot of the people that he was a fan with, or a fan of, I should say, that they had kind of gotten to know Joe a little bit as somebody that was a faithful listener. It was a lot easier since he was already in the industry as a fan, that in 2020, when people that were established were now looking for a lot more content because they needed content and they had the time to produce more content, to say yes to somebody that's an up and comer and trying to get something started. And they remember what it was like trying to start it when people weren't listening to podcasts as much. And so they would, well, I have extra time on my hand to make more casts. So yeah, let's bring on these newcomers. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. And we sure as fuck didn't. Like, blankets hanging in the background. I used the Turtle Beach headset plugged into my shitty laptop, and we made it work, and it was a lot of fun. And we didn't expect ever to have people listen to our fucking dumb heads.
That was it, though. We had no expectation, but we were very happy to talk to these people. That's what I'm saying about that manifestation of something positive happening. We always ended calls with these people who Joe and I listened to podcasts for all of 2020. And because we both had driving jobs, we were constantly just listening to content all day. So to talk to people that we listened to was a little bit, we were a little starstruck in our minds for a second, but just to talk to these people was amazing. And we'd always end the call making a friend every single time. They'd be like, wow, this was great. Please reach out to me. I'll come on again anytime. It was always great.
Yeah, I know more people and have had more conversations in the last 3 years than I have my entire life. And I feel like I know more, but now I have 4 times as many questions too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword of feeling like I kind of understand what's going on and also not knowing what the fuck is going on. So
more
we're
you
stuck
learn,
in
the less you know.
What's that?
The more you learn, the less you know.
Well, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. Is I came in thinking that at least perspective wise and paradigm wise, I had my world figured out on how I was approaching it and all of this stuff. Like Lene, Joe, Jen, they've always been a lot more open. To be honest, I'm not that open of a person by nature. I like rules. I follow rigid lines and routines, and that's my bread and butter. So getting on with people that were just like, just entertain it. You don't have to believe it. Just entertain it and talk about it and ask questions. If you're a cynic, that's fine. That works. Ask the questions that you pop up with, and it worked. And before I knew it, I was like, that head splitting moment where you realize, fuck, my world is falling apart like Inception, and I don't know what I can do to rebuild it. It was a freeing moment, and it was a terrifying moment. It's like when you figure out that you're in the middle of an ice cap with no clothes on, it's like, okay, but what, I can do anything I want. I can try to figure out from here where I'm going to go. You're not in a capsule.
It's that moment when you tip off the edge of the rabbit hole and fall directly in. It's like, oh no.
Ben, I think that's the perfect personification of a blue collar mystic.
Yeah, dude. So I'm thinking that's spot on. So I'm thinking the whole time and wanted to ask you, what was it? What was the thing that made you be like, oh shit, maybe I should look at this a little bit differently? What was that one big thing? Do you remember?
I think a big part of it was the spirituality part, because for me that was on lockdown. I was raised, we were raised staunch Baptist, and we've gone over this a million times, so I won't get into the nitty-gritty, but I always assumed that it would be wrong of me to throw all of that away just because I felt like my parents' approach to it and execution of it was wrong. I feel like that would be, basically doing the same thing, but coming from the other angle. So I still 100% believed the Christian religion, the traditional Christian religion, but I had a different view of it. It was what people would call more progressive or non-denominational or whatever. And so I did have a totally different idea of it. And that to me seemed, and I believed that was right. When we got into this, the spiritual side of it is, I think, what really broke me down, because from that religion stemmed everything: where I thought the world came from, how I thought it operated, what I believed about history, all of that. And what really broke it out was, I think I just said this on Jake's when we went on that, was that about 7-8 months into it, she brought in the idea of energies, and I thought that was the most retarded fucking thing I'd ever heard, because I didn't believe in energies. I didn't think that you had an EMF or anything like that. And we were sitting on the couch, we were watching a show, and we were doing gay shit, like having our forehead and noses touch or something like that.
Gay Hitler.
And she put her hand on my face, and at first it just felt like her hand. But then, dude, the only thing I can describe is that just a massive amount of the best energy came out of her hand and just fucking went into my head. And I remember sitting there, and I didn't talk about it for like a week. I kind of just mulled over it, like, oh, I was high or fucking whatever, which I was, but that didn't have anything to do with it. And I remember about a week later, I brought this up, and she's like, I'm surprised that you didn't say anything about this. That kind of seems like a bigger deal. And I was like, yeah, I've kind of just been trying to like figure it out and pushing it away, like, oh, I was high or whatever. I said, but the more that I kind of came to grips with it, that is what really split my head open, because as we've said more and more on the show, you need to just take in what is around you, what is tangible. That is something is real. Everything that we talk about in the way of conspiracies and theories, like, well, shut up. Yeah, birds are robots. But it's the idea that, like, what is in front of you, what as a human is there. It's real.
Right.
Blew my mind.
Yeah,
it totally blew my mind. And that part of it, because it broke down the biggest pillar of how my brain operated and what my heart believed in and what I put everything into me as a person, just fucking fell away. And it put me into a question mark. What do I believe now? Where do I go from here? And the best feedback we had was Talk of the Tavern. What's his name? Ghost? Yeah. Ghost. I missed the first Talk of the Tavern that they had, Joe and Jen went on. I'm at work. I'm like, oh, fuck. I wasn't able to make that podcast. I should listen to it to see what it's all about. And since I'm not on it, it's a lot less gay. So I turned on the podcast, and one of the first things that Ghost said before they even had joined the stream, when he was talking to the other people, was that he was like, yeah, I was really hoping I would be able to talk to Ben, because I've literally watched his journey from being a stereotype of one side of these issues into changing everything about how he even just approaches these things. And it was really cool to see. And that hit me because, one, I wasn't expecting it. And two, I'm thinking, well, this is not just another podcaster. So this is also going out to listeners. And then when I started doing a little bit more self-reflecting, I'm like, oh, fuck. Yeah, my whole brain has changed about how I approach things and think about things and how open I am to new information. So long story, but yeah, that's basically what happened.
No, that's great, man. I appreciate you sharing it. That's killer. Yeah, that's one of the big things too here. I think everyone's a blue collar mystic, right? We're all trying to figure ourselves out. So that's kind of the whole thing. And I love to ask people their story. That's like one of our big things, because like story is there's a lot to that too. But a lot of what you're talking about, it kind of reminds me of Robert Monroe a little bit. And I was a big time skeptic myself before I kind of
Like
got
the
into
Monroe Institute.
Exactly right. Yeah. So
Okay.
he wrote several books. The first one, he talks about like journeys out of body, where he starts coming out of his body and he doesn't know what's going on. He's freaking out. He thinks he's going crazy, in fact, and goes to his friend who's a psychologist and says, "Man, I'm losing my fucking mind. Like I'm having these experiences. It's weird." He's like, "I think I need to be institutionalized." And the guy's like, "No, just ride it out. See kind of what happens." And so they start to develop. And he starts to learn and understand exactly what's going on, and eventually becomes, part of that Monroe Institute with all the binaural beats and all that stuff. But it all started with him accidentally astrally projecting, and so he didn't know how to define, like, deal with it. He was freaking out, but ultimately, like that was a big. A big thing that kind of he was dealing with. For me, I had these so I grew up Christian too, but not Baptist. We did Baptist some, but more like Pentecostal. And
woo!
Yeah.
Shit. Sorry, baby.
Snakes, and we didn't actually do snakes, but
Did you do flags?
But we
Did you
did
do talking in tongues.
We
Did you
did
do
talking
jazz
in tongues.
hands?
Yes, lots of jazz hands all the time. Jazz. I
Oh,
still
I
do
actually-
jazz hands. But
The talking in tongues is a huge thing.
yeah, that's it. That's basically it. Yeah. They're just excited. They're just motorboating the universe. They're just happy to be here, man.
They're just high on God, buddy.
Yeah. Well, and then that's how it was. It was like, is your party BYOB? That's right. Bring your own Bible. And then we'd prophesy in the living room.
My God.
Next
So
level.
gay.
It's super lame. But that's how I grew up, right? And
love
so
it.
about 17 years old. And so, but I had some experiences at that time that were, subjectively very real to me. Like if I told you about them, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, bro. But for me, they were real. And so I could never shake that. And I tried to shove myself into sort of an objectivist mindset and read a bunch of Ayn Rand and, all that kind of stuff. And I think there's a lot of value to that philosophy. Even before I got down this road, I would have considered myself like a hermetic objectivist or something. But that's basically, like you got the woo-woo stuff and the sort of logical stuff. The heart and mind balance that's the whole point of everything, is to balance those two things. That
almost sounds like a CFO. I can't talk. Theosophy, kind of the combining of those two things.
I think every esoteric tradition ultimately goes down that path. It's about resolving your authentic self, using your heart and mind together. They're polarities, right? And so the Transurfing book is what made me see it, but everybody kind of has their own way of noticing that. And he says, like, your heart is like a little girl in a toy store, and your mind is like its dad taking it around the toy store. And so basically, the little girl's like stamping its feet, I want this toy. And the dad's like, no, we can't afford it. No, that's not for you. Whatever thing. But eventually, if you can get them both in agreement, the little girl gets her toy. She's happy. That's what we all came here for, basically, is his theory, to dumb it down as much as I can. But the idea is that, the will is, and Joe Roop actually taught me this, the will is in the heart. And your heart wants something. That's where will is. It's not in the masculine mind. But the masculine mind is very good at coordinating and figuring things out. So it's like the calibrator or the navigator or whatever. And then your heart should be kind of riding the chariot in charge, so to speak, knowing what you want, because you can't know what you want just logically. It won't. So I think all the esoteric stuff really leads to that. Even the Star of Solomon, sun and moon, soul, and moon, mon, whatever. It's all just basically a resolution of that. That's the main gist, I think, if we could boil it down to simplicity, because that's where charm comes from. When somebody's really being themselves, you're like, I fucking like this person. There's something about them. I'm drawn to them, whatever, because they're congruent. They're being themselves.
Isn't that what they call the great work, the joining of opposites? And that's kind of where the Baphomet idea comes from. And the merging of opposites, which is what people do, at least if you're straight. I wouldn't say straight and white, but at least if you're straight, that's what you do, is a joining of opposites. And then you guess what? You make life out of that, and then you continue. So, I mean, it sounds cliche, but literally it's all about balance, because you have to balance, the dad mind with the little girl mind, and the feminine with the masculine, and everything has to be a balance. You can be crazy and spontaneous, but you also have to have a little bit of boundaries with what you do, because we can't afford that. And so, yeah, it's both of them.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's a hard thing to fucking do.
It is. Yeah, I think that's spot on. That's it. You nailed it right there. It's the balance thing. And that's like I remember doing my first sweat lodge with this like Native American guy. And this was years and years ago, probably like 2015, maybe 2016, something like that. And I was kind of just getting into spirituality. And he sat us all down and started talking to us about how balance was the most important principle of spirituality. And I was like, this is bullshit. It's fucking lame. I hate this, because I didn't want to hear that. I wanted some like crazy, experience of like a bunch of lights in my head, or like I don't know what I wanted. I wanted some Pentecostal shit,
In tongues. Yeah.
wanted to talk in tongues, baby. Some snakes and shit. But
no, that is
You
funny,
only
though,
get jazz hands.
I notice that every time. I'm like, you know what? I'm sick of this. I just want to go live in a monastery and meditate all day. That sounds great right now. Like to be away from all of that sounds amazing, but that's going to the extreme. That is not balance. No offense to the monks. They're amazing, I'm sure. But I would love it for probably the first day. And then I'd be very annoyed that nobody talked and everybody was meditating all the time. So
That's the whole point of it, though. You're getting taken out of what you're trained to believe is the best thing for you. You have to be I believe you have to be put in a state of chaos to be your best self, if that makes sense. So you said this on a show that I was listening to, a Blue Collar Mystic show, and you said, if it works out for you, great. If it doesn't, even better. And that is 100% true, because who isn't their best self eventually when things don't work out right for them? People get fucking lazy when they're comfortable.
yeah, they do.
So they have to turn around and make things better if things don't turn out the way they wanted them to. And if things always worked out for you, you might get lazy and boring, and it wouldn't be interesting at all. That would be a shit life.
That's the nose to the grindstone idea, where the only way you're going to change something is by grinding off a part of you. I mean, to go back to Bible, I'm sure the Bible says do all things in moderation, first of all, and then it says like a man and a woman grind each other down. Basically, it literally says something like they're like Ben, you would probably know that. What is that verse?
I know
what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's talking about the way that and I don't remember the artifact that they stated, but basically the way that the way that this goes to the grinding wheel is how they do it to make it sharper and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you're gonna be dull as fuck if you don't have a grinder. What?
Just to play devil's advocate, I'll contest you on that one thing where you said, go into a monastery and, I would end up, I'd do that for a day. I'd end up hating it. And that's that balance. Is I'm like,
make it a week.
Well, the idea is that is your perception of balance, because if you take away the podcasting and the TV and the phones, 30 years ago, it was the idea that very well may objectively have been balance. I mean, monks were considered obviously pious, and they definitely, like people that took the vow of silence, or eunuchs when they chopped their shit off and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's not balance. But I feel like that balance is perception. I mean, there's a lot of people today that they don't want electronics in their home, but they still go out and they consider the removal of all electronics and any kind of interaction with people outside of physical human connection. That is balance. And for me,
I agree with you, but it's balance of perspective too. So I'm balancing my perspective against yours. Yeah, that is my perspective of balance, and
that's what I was wondering.
What you should be following is your perspective of balance, not somebody else's. And that's
absolutely
why we come to how we are in 2023, is because everybody's projecting their perception of balance on everybody else and saying, you got to accept this. That is also not balance. Sorry, you're trying to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that if it works out great, if it doesn't, even better. It's really hard to keep that in mind. There's one book. It's actually it's another book by the same author that wrote the book Reality Transurfing. It's called Tufti the Priestess. And basically she is like it's a channeled book. So she's like this goddess who's like channeling this, basically like an instruction book. And the way that she is describing reality is through like the idea of a film projector. And so there could be like infinite film rolls stacked on top of each other. And we're basically like we're projecting through the projector and choosing which film roll. But one of the big things she says that we're snails. And she says that we're snails because every time something good happens, we react positively. And then every time something bad happens, we react negatively. And we can't see the bigger picture that everything is ultimately bringing us to our goal. We just don't see all the steps in the chain, and they don't go the way we think they should. So back to that like conscious mind thing. It's like my conscious mind thinks that A is going to lead to B is going to lead to C is going to lead to D. And that's exactly how it's going to go. But in reality, it never works out that way. So, you have to be able to figure out how to take the good with the bad and then just stay dedicated to whatever that goal is and resolute in it in a calm way, right? Like, because like the more you like do like this, the more you're actually back to balance, the more friction you're causing. So all that you get back. So if you can walk calmly to the goal, then there's less resistance. There's less of all that kind of stuff, like the calm equilibrium. If it works out great, if it doesn't, even better. This thing didn't go quite as well. But then the next opportunity opens up and you're like, oh shit, this actually leads me to my goal quicker than the process that I had outlined, or it leads me to a better outcome or situation or circumstance, something that I actually couldn't have even planned on. And that's when shit gets fucking awesome right there, is when you're like, oh my God, now all of a sudden I have this cool opportunity that I couldn't have even dreamt up myself,
That's a little insider knowledge into Ben's brain. That is exactly how his works. A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D, all the way down the line. Mine's more like A could lead to B and then it'd be over. Or it could, maybe my goal is M and it stops at, S. Okay, well, that's where it ended then, I guess.
Have you ever heard the parable of the good or bad, hard to say?
I haven't.
Okay, so I don't know the whole story. I just remember this from when I worked with the kiddos who had autism symptoms, is what we called it. But we would watch weird videos, and one of them was the good or bad, hard to say parable, where this little boy got a horse, and his dad was able to afford a horse for him, and he was like, wow, this is really good. And so the son got on the horse and he rode the horse and he fell off the horse and he broke his leg, and the dad was like, wow, that's really bad. And then the son was drafted for war, but he had a broken leg, so he didn't have to go. So that I was like, wow, that's really good. And that just whatever, it goes on and on and on, where every single thing that happens, like it just reminds me of what you were just saying, where everything that happens could be good or bad. And it's hard to say until you get to step outside of that situation and say, okay, this is what that was, now that I can reflect on it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, humans only get to step outside of that once it's already done.
I know, but so what I will say is I had a ton of misfortunes happen when I was younger, and they could have been maybe me making bad decisions as a teenager, or maybe just bad luck, who knows? But eventually, so many of them happened, and to retain homeostasis in my mind, I finally found the humor in it subtly and said, this is just going to be a funny story to tell later. It might be much, much later, but I'm just going to remember that this moment is not forever, and that I'm going to look back on this maybe in 10 years. And I could be sobbing. I could be about to be in huge trouble for whatever it was. I had a lot of bad things happen, but whatever. I would say, this is going to be such a funny story to tell later. And every time it was. So I try to remember that now. It doesn't always work out so well, but I do look back on several times that I've said, this is going to be a funny story to tell later. And it always was. So try that, peeps.
I love it. I think that's great. It illustrates really like one of the ideas in the Kabbalion and several other ideas when it comes to like self-help or being effective. You have to be calm. You have to be relaxed to be good at something. If you're completely gripped, you're not going to be effective very well. So like, I'll use your guys' bat, but like, like it talks about like the swing to the left is equal to the swing to the right. I'm not trying to hypnotize you guys with this little. How did you guys know it was the exact right size too? I'm impressed. But
That was part of the joke. I was like, this is actually to scale.
To scale.
It's a mold of my shit.
It's like it's a dick joke. Joke's on you. It's not a joke.
The joke's in your hands.
It's serious.
But if you're down here, you know, when these things are happening and it's like, oh my God, that's crazy, and that you're feeling all these emotions, you're really at the cause of it. But if you can bump your awareness up, that's what they're talking about in the Hermetics,
Right.
like just being able to observe it, being more of an observer, and then you're less emotionally affected, so you're going to make a better decision. Because like one of the things that I threw in at the beginning of this conversation, because I've been thinking about it, is that everyone, I think, can be offended. I really do believe that. I can be offended. Now, how I handle that, that's up to me. Now, I might like want to get mad. I might want to, I don't know. There's a million different options, but I definitely can be offended. People can step on my toes. It's happened to me, I would say, within the past, I'd say maybe 10 days or so. So
I
like,
thought you were going to say within the last half hour. Thank God.
no,
Well-
God, no, you guys are great.
But you can also take that comparatively too, because I don't know of anybody that hasn't met that one person that they remember for the rest of their life that never got offended. Like, you can train yourself at least to the best of your ability. You can't get rid of yourself completely, but you can train yourself that virtually, if it's spoken, I'm not going to get offended. They're just fucking words. Like, yeah, maybe you just said that you wanted to fucking chop my head off. I don't know. But I'm not going to get offended or feel threatened, because until you actually try, well, they're just words. But that's way easier said than done. I am
is.
by far a loose
Yeah.
cannon, so it's not.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I get offended, but I get angry.
Well, yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Human?
I would say that's the same. That's one and the same, right? Like somebody could set me
Yeah.
off too. It would take a lot, but it could happen. And then, you know, at that point, I understand that that's there. It's like,
Right.
'cause I get in arguments all the time with like comedians this way, that way, whatever. And it's like the Trumper's going to get just as offended and be just as much of a snowflake as the, you know, the super ultra woke person. It doesn't
Right.
matter. They both have that capacity. And frankly, so do I too. Like, I hear shit all the time that I don't want to hear. Do you think I want to hear another incest joke at my fucking open mic? You know what I'm saying? Like, every single fucking week. No. I'll spare you guys the rant, but it just is what it is. I mean, I lost the mic a couple of weeks ago because I wasn't there. I was with you guys. I was out in California, and so I had a guest host the mic, and they just went super hard in the paint. And when I was literally landing the plane, and I got a text message: "Call me as soon as you can." From the owner of the place. I mean, oh my God, you just can't write.
You're not
this
allowed
stuff.
to do whatever you want. I thought comedy was kind of loosened up. Like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, there are stand-up suicide notes, and you write them right there. Like,
It's so
We need the
funny.
Patrice O'Neills of comedy back in the world. Comedy's
I
just
know.
comedy. Let it be
The Sam
comedy. Leave
Kinison.
it alone.
I agree. It's just not appropriate for everywhere, and it just wasn't a good fit. This guy was cool.
Never
He really
know,
was.
though.
But these comics just went. I wasn't there. You know what I mean? So they just did their thing and I'm sure they had a good time. And I'm not mad at them or any of that either. It wasn't really a good place for it, but it's funny. You know what I'm saying? Like, and like the owner had dropped in, or like the GM dropped in that night on top of it, you know, to check out the comedy show. You know?
That makes it so funny, though.
That's way
stop.
funnier.
That's going to be such a funny story to tell later, which you're telling tonight. See?
Exactly.
It's always funny. If you can see a little bit of humor in every situation besides a death of a loved one, and even that, it depends on how they died. I'm sorry.
I can make
But
that
if
funny.
you can
which
find
loved
a
one?
little... Yeah. No, I mean, I can understand certain circumstances where there can be no humor, but I think it's very few and far between, much fewer and farther between than people might think.
No,
Just
there's
stop
always humor
getting
in
so upset
everything.
about every bad thing that
There is.
happens.
You can choose to see the humor in it, even because it's again that distance, and it's like, even if it sucks, even if it hurts you, because what do they say? Comedy is time plus distance or something.
Tragedy plus time.
Tragedy
or something
plus
like that.
time. I think it's more often like tragedy plus tragedy. Just keep fucking
Tragedy,
Sometimes.
tragedy plus brilliant wit and writing. That's it.
I hate to be the fart on the candle, but I actually need to get out of here.
We're over
I
time.
need to
Hi, Ben.
Well, you guys can continue. I just
Okay.
got to peel.
All right. Well, I appreciate
It's-
it. I
it's
appreciate
9
it, man.
times.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, dude. I loved hearing your story, and
It was good
Lene,
to
it was
actually
great-
meet John here.
Great to meet you as well. Thank you all
Thanks for
so
letting
much.
me listen.
Thanks for being here.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time. Have
Right.
fun.
Word.
Yes.
Peace out. That's awesome. I loved it.
That's actually a standing joke with our shows that Ben cuts out early because he has to go to bed. So
Yeah, I don't know if you heard the episode we did, what was it? The audio drama one.
oh yeah,
I don't know if we released that on our end.
I think I did. No, it was just an audio drama we did with some friends, and
fun.
the joke
With
at the
True
end
Theater
was
Radio.
Ben said he had to leave early because he has work tomorrow.
He's like, sorry guys, gotta work in the morning. I'll be back.
It's
Bye.
100% true.
That happens.
I love that. I want to hear it. I love those kind of like radio soaps. They're super duper fun.
It's like what would you even call it? Like Lord of the Rings or some kind of like
That's a perfect
fantasy
depiction of
style
it.
show. Yeah, I've never done voiceover.
It was about how
so-
legit Bat was started, but it's not, obviously not true. It's hilarious though and amazing.
If you
and
know our show,
Jonah and Josh are great over at True Theater Radio. Go check them out.
True Theater Radio. Yeah, I'll definitely
Mhm.
check them out. That's
It's
awesome.
TRU Theater. So it looks like Truth Eater Radio,
spell it Truth Eater.
but just all one word.
I see it. Yeah, yeah. I got it open. That's cool. Hell yeah.
No, they're great. And if you ever want to do voiceovers, hit them up because it is fun to do. I've never done it, but it is fun.
Or if you want to write a script, they're down with that too. They want people to write for them and do voices.
Cool. That's awesome.
They're
Totally
all
de-
about the creation.
We totally
Yeah, it's cool.
derailed the conversation again. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
We're bad. I mean,
No,
good at that.
no, I love that. No, we wanted to just have a casual catch up anyways, and that's what I had in mind. I love the idea that they're doing this. I think I definitely want to check that out and see what it's all about. I'm all about like making different kinds of content. I like making podcasts and all that stuff. I want to do other stuff too, though. I see a lot of other people doing, different things. I've been working on public speaking now, but other than
You're
that,
already doing that, dude. You're
Yeah, I
literally public speaking.
I'm doing the public speaking thing. That's one of the things that, as far as like a creative outlet, but I want to do other stuff, like more story stuff, like like the Paranoid American stuff that they put out with Juan. That turned out super cool. It was cool to see Juan turn the corner and do something different other than podcasting, and he's really fucking been busy, it seems like.
I know. I need to check that out because I've seen all their stuff on Instagram, but I haven't ordered the actual magazine or anything yet. So
That's awesome.
It
The
looks
creative
awesome, though.
outlets that are happening right now are so great. And I feel like that all came out of 2020. Like we were talking about on a show the other day, our guest said, I think 2020 was really great. And I said, yes, I've said that too. And I'm not speaking to all of the negative things that happened. I'm not trying to say
those are pretty
negative
cool
things
too.
didn't happen. But there was so much positivity that came from that. Look at how many people changed their whole way of life. And we're like, hey, my eyes are open now to something I never even saw before. So good for them. Good for the whole world. I think it's fantastic that people are being more creative. They're looking at the world in ways they've never seen before. They're maybe going against certain things that they thought were very important that they're now looking at like, that's not really that important to me anymore. Like watching CNN or being in my white collar job. It's not that big of a deal. You don't have to worry about things like your credit score or your social credit score. If you have this big house like your neighbors, that stuff doesn't matter. Go get some chickens, get a garden, figure out stuff for yourself. Be your own boss. That's my next thing. I don't want to work for anybody anymore. So I had listened to your show. I think I reached out to you to schedule this show 2 days after I lost my job. So it's fine. Everything turned out fine because we were in this whole upheaval thing. I work in the mortgage industry. It's been weird. So on February 13th, we had been just strung along for a couple weeks about whether we'd have a job or not. And we were all told we're definitely going to have a job. Everything's fine. And then Monday came, we were all good, kind of confused. 5 o'clock hit. We got an email that was like, hey, you all don't have a job as of 5 p.m. today. And everyone in the whole company got the email. And I was like, wow, damn, that's crazy. And now I had been working in the mortgage industry for 3 years. I was getting a bonus for the first time in a really long time. I had just gotten a raise, huge promotion. It was the biggest check I was going to get that in 3 days from the date of this letter. And they said, and also, we're not going to pay you. Sorry, the company's like going under. We can't even make our last payroll. So you won't be getting paid at all.
Oh,
and I was like, yeah. So I had plans for this paycheck that was coming. And I looked at it though. And in that moment, and it was a moment, it wasn't even a second. I just saw this like mental fork in the road. And I was like, I could get really mad right now. Or I just looked at it and I was like, well, I have $200 in my bank account. I'm going to go get a case of beer. I'm going to go hang out with Joe. And I just went home and I'm like, hey, babe, what's up? And I was the coolest I've ever been in probably the last 3 years in the mortgage industry. I came home with no money. I was like, I don't even know how we're going to pay our mortgage this month. And I don't fucking care. And I was awesome. And it ended up all working out totally fine, but it was a great feeling. And I realized you can have that feeling at any moment. And the moments that are the worst are the best for me to feel okay. But those trivial moments that don't really matter, those are the times that I freak out. Those are the times I need to check myself. Where like someone cuts me off in traffic and I'm like, God damn it, you fucking piece of shit, learn how to drive.
You die motherless.
What are you? I didn't say that, but that is a really funny Louis C.K. quote that I very much related to. Because I learned to drive in Boston, to be fair. Okay. But yeah, those times that
They
are really
fucking suck over there.
trivial, where like something little happens, like you stub your toe or your washing machine breaks or whatever, like life's not ending. When life's ending and you're able to say, you know what, it's going to be fine. You have to think of your worst case scenario. That's what I did, I guess. I took the worst case scenario. Like I'm going to pay my credit cards late. I have been building my credit for 15 years because I wrecked it when I was a teenager. And it's finally great. And I was like, well, I might have a bad credit score. We're not going to lose our house because I know that takes like fucking forever to get evicted. So our kids are going to have a place to sleep. I can definitely afford food because I'm not going to be paying any of my other bills and I'll have a crappy credit score. Okay. So we'll still have all of these things. So I took my worst case scenario and made it okay because I realized that it's not really that bad. And then I was fine. And I had definitely had enough money to grab a case of beer and be okay. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. Yeah. Something happens to me. I have a similar thing like you, where when crazy epic shit happens, I usually hold it together a lot better than when like little things tick me off or get me, like when it's something crazy, it's almost like it's so surreal that I'm like, yeah, I'm sort of in disbelief maybe a little bit about it too. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't seem as emotionally affected.
I think that state of disbelief is what helps you though, because you're in tune with it. So that state of disbelief kind of pops you out of that little hole that you've put yourself in, that little wheel that we get ourselves
it's like
in,
emotional
where we're spinning
adrenaline,
around.
where it just like gets you through.
Yeah, but it pops you out of that place where you're stuck. And it's like, well, you're not stuck here anymore. And then you're like, oh my God, thank God. Maybe that happens when we die. We're like, oh my God, I'm not in this body anymore. This is amazing.
That's what we talked about earlier. That's that grinding stone that's like sharpening your edges, because they're like, you got to remove some shit first before you get sharper.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they say like iron sharpens iron, and that's another random Bible quote. I'll just throw that in there.
That might be the one we were trying to think of earlier. As iron sharpens iron, so does a woman sharpen her man's knob or something like it.
Sounds pretty close. That's it.
When you were talking about men and women at the grinding stone, I'm like, do you want a divorce?
No,
I don't know what you're talking about right now.
That's my job as a man in the patriarchy, obviously.
That's fine. I like that. That's why I'm a woman and I'm straight.
Back in the
I enjoy
kitchen.
it.
Sandwiches now. Thank you.
Oh, man. Yeah, right.
No, actually, I'll make my own sandwich.
Yeah, you're better at it anyway.
No, man, I really appreciate y'all for coming and hanging out with me. It was so cool to meet you. I mean, of course you guys were successful with this. I know you had a pure intention. You guys are so sincere, and I'm sorry if it was weird when you walked in with the barbecue and people were looking at you funny. But as soon as I saw you guys, I was like, oh,
that's 100%
no, you
our
were out back,
weirdness, because I
we
was
were
already
being weird. Yeah,
I was already in a place I didn't really know, meeting people that I've only met on the internet, and I'm like, it's fine actually. But it was funny because we had all this food and we were walking in, and then we're like, okay, let's go
It
find
was
the
just
party.
like kumbaya.
Yeah, we had to
kind
go
of-
back to the fire pit, and then you immediately found us, and I'm like, oh, right, we are in the right place.
I was like,
love it.
okay, this is where our people are. And the people inside were totally fine. Like, I'm not judging them in any way. I was just like, oh my God, is this the theme of this? It's just very quiet.
I was like, they are way more
That's
spiritual than
okay,
us because I don't know what's going on.
We walked out back and everyone was looking at satellites and smoking weed and drinking beer and hanging out by the fire. And it was great. And everyone inside was cool too. I'm not
I
judging.
was like,
you
I
guys
just want to
if
eat
you're
some
listening to
ribs. Is
this.
that okay? Is that kosher here or not kosher?
Yeah, I mean, dude,
That was a good time though. Thanks for letting us crash the party. That was very nice.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much. I hope to see you next year. I think they changed the date to later in May, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's like the last weekend in May or something like that. You guys should come.
Are they going to the same spot
I
or a
believe
different place?
so. Yeah, same spot, I believe.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll definitely be there then.
Yeah, you guys got to come hang out. Maybe we'll do like a podcast or do something there, you know.
Hopefully we can meet Graham this time too, that big
Other
teddy
thing.
bear.
Yeah, we missed the Graham. Shout out to Graham.
Shout
Yeah.
out Graham.
He's the best. Darren was awesome. It was cool meeting Bill and Megan too. Like, I think you talked to them for a while.
Mhm. From Neighbors Feed and
Oh
Sleep.
yeah.
They live in Atlanta. They live like right down the street from me. It took me all the way to California to meet them. It's crazy.
Oh, that's so funny.
No, they're great.
Yeah, so many great people. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
fun.
everyone was awesome. It was really cool. So beautiful up there too.
Maybe in about
You can
8
see so many
years we can
stars.
do a collab and have enough listeners where we could actually organize something like that, you know?
I think so.
Or just
I would
meet
love
you.
to. Yeah, no, totally. Like there's and just piggyback with other people too. You know, Joe and the Fringe FM, those guys are thinking about maybe doing something. You know, it'd be a little bit because it's different. There's a lot of different options. I'd like to do something like casual that's just kind of like more of a meetup, you know, or something. You know, it just kind of depends, or something more formal, or something more.
Or
like,
we could do the monastery thing and do a meditation retreat and see how long Joe lasts.
Oh yeah, dude. I don't think I would last very long. You said you'd make it a week. I'm not so sure.
That's what she said.
Yeah, it was super fun. It was a great crew. That's such a cool crew. Talk about balanced. And it's like so many people who understand so many different things.
That's why it was overwhelming, because I'm like, which person do I talk to about what thing? But in person, it's more of like let's just be humans right now and hang out. Like, we don't have to talk about weird shit. Like, we're here drinking beers, hanging out. Like, just leave that weird, simulation shit or whatever.
It's funny
off
though.
the
I
table.
think I agree with what you're saying, but I know I see your pure intention is always to be that way, to be just pure. Let's just hang out and have a good time. That's the energy you give off to people. And that's why we always come out of it having a good time, because you're never like, okay, I have bullet points and you better stick to them or else. It's
If you had
never
bullet
serious or
points,
rigid.
I would have been like, I don't think this is the show for us.
Witness
Yeah.
exhibit A. Yeah, no.
I can't do it. No, I love to be in the moment and improvise a little bit and just be, just goof around and be real, and that's what I prefer to do with this. And like, there's obviously, like I said, I like to do some other artistic kind of endeavors. Those will be a little bit more specific, because I'm not just trying to just make like just content or whatever and just like try to fill up the diaper of the internet or whatever. That's what it kind of sounds like. Maybe people are just like, I made 55 podcasts. I'm like, dude, just stop, just slow down. Take it easy, but every medium's different and it has its own kind of use. And for me, I like to hang out and just make it spontaneous. It's fun. You guys are great. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
And we'll keep in touch for sure. Guys, be sure to follow Joe and Jen of the Legit Bat on Instagram. It's at Legit Bat. And then podcast is on Spotify, is where I listen to it. You guys are all over iTunes,
It's all over most places, I believe. Last I checked.
All the podcast places.
Legit Bat podcast. Anything else you guys want to make people aware about, or plug or talk about before we wrap this thing up?
I think you pretty much covered it. I always just kind of, I used to always end, but I kind of end with, it's something simple, but it use your turn signals. It means more than you think. You're thinking about other people.
He's talking to everyone from Oregon. If you're in Oregon, use your turn signals and just drive in the right lane, because that's where you belong.
First of all,
That's what he means.
if you're from Oregon or Washington,
Fuck off.
No, just kidding. But use your turn signals and drive the speed limit.
And stop matching someone's speed when they pass you. Just be okay with them passing you and move over.
You'll
It's
be
fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
I 100% endorse all of that, every single bit of it, no matter where you're at. Oregon, California, Atlanta, because it happens here too.
New
Oh my
York.
God.
It happens everywhere. We're just
Yeah.
saying that because we're here. When I lived in Massachusetts, they would say that about the New Hampshire drivers. When I lived in Indiana, they'd say that about the Illinois drivers. It's everywhere. They just use the other states to make an excuse.
Oh, yeah,
but
I'm
that's
well
how
aware
everyone
of what-
drives.
I'm well aware of what Oregon and Washington drivers think of California drivers. And like I said,
Fuck off.
that's all.
That's it. I think that's a good place to leave it. Thank you, guys.
All right.
yeah, that's how we roll around here. No, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Guys, everybody go check them out. They're super fun podcasts and really, really good memes. You're doctoring those memes up yourself, Joe? Some of them.
Some of them. I've made a lot of them, but a lot of them I steal because I'm lazy and they're hilarious. So I'm like, why? Well,
You give the credit where it's due.
usually, yeah.
Yeah, keep up the good work, dude. The original.
No,
ones are
shout
great.
out to our followers who I get those memes from because
Yep.
a lot of times it's a really tiny little account that has a fire meme, and I'm like, oh, yes. For daddy.
Yeah, hashtag the repost. Let's go. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.